Hi Ray, thanks for giving us this opportunity to interview you for the CITP Assignment 3, and the purpose of the interview is just to get a brief understanding of what it is that you do as an IT professional. So could you please give us a brief summary of your background and what it is that you do, and then I'll commence with the interview.
Yeah, no worries, Stephen. It's my pleasure. So I work as a risk audit and licensing specialist for Sydney Water. So my roles are split between those three disciplines. I've previously worked in other roles in IT. In the grand scheme of things, I've had about 12 to 14 years, I think now, of IT experience. And this role currently, I've been doing for a year and a half.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you manage to come by the job at Sydney Water?
So I didn't necessarily come by it, it actually came to me. I had previously working in that organisation already, so a job did come up. However, funnily enough, I didn't go for this job. I was actually handpicked for it because of the additional work that I was doing outside of the scope of what my previous role was. So I used to do service desk work.
Right.
However, I was doing a lot of project work that was outside of that, and I guess they appreciated that and they offered me the role.
So what are some of the challenges that you face in your day-to-day work?
So around the risk space, I conduct risk workshops, and sometimes the challenges can be throughout my workshop I'll have 8 to 14 people with differing opinions, and I have to mediate those opinions to come down to the one conclusion or to the one acceptance. And you can deal with different personalities in the room at that time, so getting them to see the one vision can be a challenge.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So how can one acquire a job that's similar or the same as the one that you currently have?
I think the best way to probably do it is start off in the role that you can start off with, and my role is not really an entry role. However, there are a lot of entry roles that you could start off with, and once you're there and you've got your foot in the door, just really have a look and see what the functions are in different areas of IT, and have a look and see, if you can, see what they're doing, and if you enjoy what they're doing or you find it interesting, see if you can put your hand up and be to do a secondment or potentially help out with what some of the phases or things that they do in that area. And if you do win that, then you will do some hands-on work, and you will discover for yourself whether you like that job, that role, or that position. And it could obviously improve your career. If it was something that you'd like to do and you do get appointed the job because you've demonstrated that you could do it,
right,
then it'll be a career move. Yeah.
So with your chosen career, what are some qualifications necessary in getting a job?
Okay. So me personally, in terms of qualifications, I finished school and then went straight to a TAFE course. In fact, I did a certificate 2, 3 and 4, and then a diploma in network administration, which is not so much what I'm doing now. However, it was the highest qualification you could get from TAFE for information tech.
Okay.
I then started this role, I started working as a service desk analyst, and then progressed without any qualifications, to be completely honest.
Mm-hmm.
But I did eventually go to UTS and obtain my Bachelor in Computer Science, which I think is part of this course because I actually did this very assignment. So, but this is not necessarily a requirement for me to get into this role. I believe I got this role without the degree, believe it or not.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So do you think experience was playing a major part in this?
Yeah, definitely experience, and just having a willingness to work and a willingness to learn in the job that you're in, rather than just being there and doing what you're told.
Right.
If you show that extra initiative, then you could be handpicked, and that's the natural progression of things, and that's more important.
Yeah, definitely. What are the types of tasks that you are in charge of?
Okay, so in my role, obviously, there's those three functions. I'll give you one task from each. In the risk one, as I mentioned in one of the previous questions, I'll run a risk workshop. So, for instance, I did one today. We're trying to get Outlook web access for our staff via the internet on a public machine. So we've never had this service available before. Currently you need two-factor authentication, which means a username and password, as well as a token-generated password, so it's two factors, but this is relieving that. So I'd get everybody in a room and I'd do a risk workshop and I'd produce what's called a risk register, and this register will show the risk, the causes of the risk, the likelihood, the impact deriving from a consequence as well, and then any existing controls, which are mitigations that would reduce the consequence for that risk, and then potentially any proposed controls, which would mean in the future we're going to do this to reduce the risk. That's risk. Audit. If a function in IT needs to be measured for its effectiveness, or its performance, or any other metric, we'd invoke an audit project, in which case I will drive and I will facilitate, as well as any audits that might come externally. So we could have, for instance, the ISO 27001 certification audit, which Sci Global does, which is an external client. They come in and I facilitate that process to make sure that they're able to talk to the right subject matter experts and the right project leads.
Okay.
Licensing. Around this function, I make sure that there's what we call a custodian, which is essentially a license holder for each of the products that are used in City Water. Because when someone requests a piece of software, there needs to be an authorization mechanism, and currently that is an administrator. So we'd go to the administrator and we say, is this person authorized to use this license? Provided they say yes or no, they get that outcome. It's my role to oversee that process and make sure it's working.
All right.
But not to invoke it. So I own that process.
Okay.
So there's some samples.
So you must encounter many challenges in your job every day. What would you say are the most demanding ones?
The most demanding ones would probably be, I'd say, around process creation. So my role, it's ownership of the process, but not someone that does the process. So in most cases I have to write a process. So when you have to write a process that is going to be used by the entire organisation, it starts to become a political slash it can be a struggle sometimes, because you need to have everybody to see your vision, or you need to have everybody to suddenly change what they're currently doing and doing it in this new way, which is this process that you have to write. So one of the first tasks that Sydney Water appointed me when I got the job was to create an IT risk framework, because our IT risk area needed some development. So creating this framework was a whole new piece of work that I'd never done before. So not only was it a framework which is hard to do, but it was something I've never done before. So it is, I have challenges every day, but process writing is almost the biggest challenge, but the most enjoyable thing.
Okay. So with the dynamic and changing nature of the IT industry, do you see yourself requiring any further education or qualifications in order to progress in your current job?
Yeah, that's a big yes. I'm looking at doing ISO 27001 certification type short courses. So these can vary from 3 days to 2 weeks. But in terms of tertiary university education, now that I've just completed my Bachelor of Science, whether I'm going to do an MBA or not is not on the cards at the moment, but it might be something that I'd like to do in the future. But currently it's focused more on these short courses, short certification type stuff. Yeah.
So what are the types of ethical issues you would say a IT professional would encounter in their careers? Not specific to your job, but just in IT in general.
Yeah. One ethical issue I'd like to talk about is most probably where there's a disconnect between the way IT people talk and the way the business talk. So it can be not only confusion in language, because a lot of the times at my job I need to have both members. So there'd be a workshop that I could run with someone from the business as well as someone from IT. And there's an ethical concept there because they can't talk the same language.
Yeah, of course.
So that issue, I have, as being in my role, I essentially have to translate this information so that they can understand, because I can deal with highly technical security aspects that is almost impossible to translate. So that's probably one thing I can mention.
What are the aspects of your job that you enjoy the most?
Probably, like I said before, process writing, because it is the most challenging, and it's always good to take a challenge on. Not only because it triggers the brain to think in unusual ways, but also once you achieve something like that, like writing a process or writing a framework for an organization, you're essentially leaving your legacy for that company. So when I leave, my name will still be on the documentation that they'll be using. So that's a big bonus for me.
Okay.
And also career-wise, if I can write something on my resume, the fact that I've created a framework, it's much more attractive than just following process.
Definitely.
So for me, that's the pivotal thing.
Okay. Thanks, Ray, for giving us your time from your busy schedule. Was there anything else that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'll add something. Thank you, Stephen, for giving me the time and the opportunity as well to express how I work and what I do. I'd like to add a few points for any young IT professional trying to make it out there. I think the most important thing to do to progress your career is to at least try and get your foot in the door. It doesn't matter what that is. Just get your foot in the door, start working with technology, start familiarizing yourself with the outside world, how it works, how it feels to work in an actual working environment, and then just start scoping out the different functions in IT. Right now, you're probably not aware of how vast it is, but there's actually quite a lot of areas to work in IT, and you can only really understand that once you work. And once you do work, just make sure you put your hands up for any additional work that might come up. Be very assertive and sort of insist that you can do additional things for your management. Really try and show that you're taking initiative and showing your willingness to learn, and that's really what's going to set yourself aside and at least give you some experience. And then with that experience, you can then go out and do whatever you want. Just make sure you're really taking initiative in your workplace. Yeah.
All right.
That's about it.
All right. Thanks.
No worries.